Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to another edition, part two of the Elder Futhark in our Foundations in Magic series. We're going to look at the second Aett, or the second group of eight today. If you'll recall the last time, if you watched that one, you know that we did the first eight. And then we talked about how we can, not only the interpretations of the runes, but also how we can use them in magic. So, um, let's go ahead and remind everybody that, again, the runes are 24 in all in the Elder Futhark. There are other sets of runes. There's the younger Futhark. It has less, I believe. There's the Icelandic one. Lots of different types of alphabets that are out there that are often used for divination purposes as well. But you also have the witches' runes. That's another one. You've got the Ogham, fuse or staves, whatever you want to call them. I've made a set of both smaller Ogham runes, and then I've made the longer staves as well. So, it just depends on what your persuasion is, I guess. But I'm just really have always been fond of the Elder Futhark, and I've always worked with it. So, pretty much my entire life. And so anyway, I just thought it would be fun to do this series and just kind of explore some of we're not going to get into tremendous detail here. I'm not going to really get into much of the history or anything surrounding them. We know that Odin hung upside down for 9 days from the world tree to gain enlightenment, and the Norns were down there at the well of word, and they're the ones that gave him that provided the enlightenment via the runes. Again, it's been used as an alphabet, but it's also a divination method, and it's a way similar to the major arcana, the way it's a soul archetype group of cards. The same is true for the runes as well. You're looking at, because you don't have the equivalent of the small cards, little small runes here. But basically, that's what you're looking at when you look at the Elder Futhark. You're looking at the soul's journey through form, through basic principles that we need to, imbue upon creation, essentially. That's the other side of this. We like to think once we get here into form that we're purely reactive. Everything happens to us, and we're just simply reacting to the world around us, and we don't understand by our values, by how we communicate with others, by who we are in this world. We're either reflecting spiritual values or we're not. The runes can help you, I think, identify what some of those spiritual principles you should be, expressing to others really are all about. And so things to consider, even if you just want to look at it that way. So let's go ahead and get started we'll start with the ninth rune of the Elder Futhark, Hagalaz. Now, the 9th, 10th, and 11th runes of the Elder Futhark, I will tell you, Hagalaz, Nathis, and Isa, represent the Norns. Hagalaz represents basically Hela, and she's thought to be the rune of the past. It's thought to be the witch rune. It's a water element rune, so it's a rune of changes. And that's basically, if you think about what a witch does, what we do is we attempt in any way to bring change within a fixed framework. And fixed framework is typically in a spell, is typically the boundaries of the spell. But because we might say within the spell, well, we want this to happen, but we wish to preserve this, right? In other words, when a witch casts a spell, you're not doing it to destroy everything. You want to leave something behind. And in a sense, when you look at the rune Hagalaz, you see that change in the center, little shift, right? Disrupting the balance, but within the two lines of Isa, providing the structure and the framework. If you were to shift it one way or the other, you'd have Nathis, wouldn't you? Well, you'll know that in a minute, because I only briefly showed you. You'd have that, wouldn't you? The ninth rune of the Elder Futhark, we're talking about endings. We're also talking about beginnings. But we're talking about, it also represents hail. That's the other thing. You know, you've got fire with Nothies, you've got hail and ice with both Isa and Hagalaz. So with Hagalaz, you know, you're talking about chaos. You're talking about the celestial ice egg, about the beginnings of creation. You're also talking about protection. It also represents the letter H. It can also be considered lucky if you have Hagalaz, if you have a witch on your side. It's lucky. It's also useful in trance work. You can hold it and use it as a focus and enter through the doorway into the astral realm. Again, paired with other runes, you can do that for additional power. A perfect, and I'll show you this. Excuse me. Let me get a clean piece of paper here. A perfect Norn Vine rune would be like this, to use all three together. And it's very simple. And it looks like this. You have both Hagalaz, Isa, and Nothies, don't you? So when you pair it with other runes, particularly if you do it with all the Norn runes, then you have something very, very powerful. It can be used in rituals for protection, transformation. It can be used in banishing, even curses. You could use it for that. Healing workings, again, also endings and beginnings, because when you destroy your ending, I mean, in a way, it's kind of a Dagaz experience, and we'll talk about that in the next video. But if you've seen my videos on Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune, you know that we talk about that a lot, that this transition from one phase, the ending of one phase and the beginning of another, is known as, at least I call it, my Dagaz moment. But that's what you can do with Hagalaz. You can use Hagalaz. You can pair it with Dagaz. You could even do something like this. You could take, in terms of a bind rune, if you wanted to bring the energies together, you could do this. And if you'll recall, no, I'm not a very good artist. It's a miracle I got the first one done. But you can see Dagaz. This is Dagaz. And again, we'll talk about that next time, because it's the 23rd rune. So, but you can see it contained within that, can't you? So if you wanted to bring both energies together, see, you could invoke, you could do a working surrounding, you know, the new beginnings, or the end of one phase and the beginning of another one, within a fixed framework. You see, destroying that which no longer serves and embracing that which does. It can be used in weather workings, renewal rituals, chaos magic. It can also be used in discerning patterns. That's one of the things that I think that witches are excellent at doing. Empaths as well, and I'm both. And so I think that what we do is we discern patterns. And so, you know, from that, we can sort of then follow that channel of energy out to its logical conclusion. Because that's really what life really is. We're engaging in these little channels of energy, maybe by ourselves, that we put out there. Maybe we interact with others that have already established it. Or once we get out there, we're interacting in those channels with people. But you never know. Lots of possibilities or probabilities could be out there. All we're doing now is just reviewing all of it and putting it all together in some kind of meaningful fashion for ourselves. But discerning patterns, you know, working a spell to do that, I mean, it would involve clarity. But, you know, so maybe Sawillo, which is this rune. So you might use that one as well, bringing the light of truth in. But you can see how you can combine these runes together and create an even more powerful source of magic for what you need to do. So the next rune, the 10th rune then, and excuse me, 10 reduces to 1. So we're talking the idea of new beginnings here. keep my tea lubricating my throat here so I don't lose my voice. But again, we're talking the fire elements. We're talking will. Whereas with Hagalaz, and then the next one, Isa, we're talking, again, the water element for both of those. You know, whenever you work, especially if you work a curse, which is why, you know, if you do something like that, in my opinion anyway, you need to be extraordinarily careful, because the impact or blowback to yourself just in the working of it is so great. You have to work up every emotion, right? All the anger, all the rage, all the love, all of everything, which comprises the reason for having to do it in the first place. And feeling that level of intensity takes its toll on the body, right? Also takes its toll on your frequency. I mean, frequency lowers, all right? Anytime you work negative magic like that, anytime you work something that is trying to control people, you potentially reduce, no matter what your lofty goal is. I mean, you can stem some of it. You know, I mean, we're not supposed to be pacifists, right? If something is going to happen, we need to stop it, right? So you can do that. But sometimes people really don't take the full measure of it, and maybe you work a curse or a binding or whatever, and you've done something that's coming from your own ego and not from the standpoint of something greater. And so whenever that happens, your frequency lowers. So you're fully entrenched into the ego witch at that point instead of spirit witch. And spirit witch is where you belong. So in any event, you know, we're talking about, you know, since we have them surrounding will and not these. Not these is the inner friction to create, the inner friction to manifest. It's about necessity and need, the need fire within. You can use it to achieve goals. It's a protection type of a rune. Represents the letter N. It represents overcoming restrictions by breaking out of it, using that inner friction within to do that. Positive change, overcoming fear, transformation, obviously. But in magic now, what we're going to do with Nathis is we're going to use it to center, to bring our will to center. In other words, aligning ego with spirit, transmuting ego into spirit using the fire element and Nathis. Let's see what else. Workings to remove self-doubt and fear. I did notes like I did last time, so I don't forget anything, because I will. I'll get in a flow and I'll forget half the stuff I want to say. Protection workings. Magics to divert difficulties. Thursaz last week was another one you can use that for. Magics to catalyze change. You want something to be different. Again, you know, if we look at the first bind rune there I did, up here, catalyzing change within a fixed framework based on spirituality, based on spiritual values, based on a spiritual focus. That's what that is. Banishing, cleansing ritual, fire element, obviously. You can use it to purify. And then moving to our last rune for the Norn runes, we have Isa. Oh, I should tell you that the Nathis is the rune, the Norn rune of the future, or not, yeah, the future. So then that leaves Isa to be the rune of the present moment. So Hagalaz is the past, Nathis is the future, and Isa is the present. You can use this to align. Again, water element rune. The Norn rune of the static realm or present moment, the letter I. Becoming, stillness. It represents will or ego development, transmuting it into spirit, basically, if you're talking about ego. There's also a balanced tension contained within Isa, which I find really interesting, because you're not really, it's like both forces are holding steady, okay? Will, intellect, okay? Will, emotions, whatever, you know, the opposite is, or maybe all four, right? All four elements holding in a specific type of tension based on the alignment in spirit. Make sense? It's getting a little warm in here. But it can be used to overcome restriction, to suppress impulsive behavior, obviously, focus, higher consciousness, alignment and higher consciousness. I mean, it just basically represents consciousness, basically. Freezes unwanted behavior or situations. So basically then, what you could do then, magic-wise, is you could use it in terms of rituals for developing the will or establishing boundaries. You can use it in meditation and trance work. Aett can also be used in shielding. If you're an empath and you need to shield, draw it, take your finger, draw it on forehead, out in front of you. You see, and that's the other thing, whether we're using these runes as a sigil that we carry with us, or if we want to draw it on our forehead, or on our chest, or in the air, you're still invoking it. No matter how you do it, on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter. Even if you just visualize it, you're still invoking the energies and the magic of the runes. You can cool a situation that's volatile. You can bind forces together. Again, there's that tension again, that interesting balanced tension. You can use it to bind forces together. There's several runes you can use that for when you're doing a bind rune. Well, just this alone, using Aett in the center of the bind rune, see, that binds that whole thing together, doesn't it? It releases stagnation. And here's the other thing you can do. You can use it. I've done this on my kids. They didn't know it, but if your child has a fever or you have a fever, you can chant Aett and draw it on the forehead in a ritual to help reduce that fever. You still want to take the measures that you normally take, but you want to put a little magic, a little Norn magic into a little Norn effect. Then you would want to draw Aett on their forehead or on their chest or whatever to cool the fever that they're having. I used to do that all the time. I don't know. Maybe they just thought it was just a gesture of love. Just like when you touch your kid's nose, like boop. I don't know. They didn't know. They didn't find out I was a witch till just maybe 10 years ago. So I don't know. I kept my silence to an insane degree. So, I mean, my husband knew something was up, but he just never really asked. So in any event, let's move on to Yura. This is a 3 energy. It's a 12th rune, so 3 energy. And this is moving energy through the body. It's an earth element rune, so it's wonderful to use in a garden bind rune. I have a garden bind rune that I have hanging around in my different greenhouses and the different garden spaces I have, and I use Yura in it. It's wonderful for harvest. It brings things to pass. It's the J letter, transformation, transition. We're going to talk about what it's made of. Yin and yang. Kind of looks like that, doesn't it? What goes around comes around. Karma. Yeah, give and take, cause and effect, both sides of the same coin. Let's see, cycles, patterns, reincarnation. We said herbalism and gardening. Unfolding awareness, coming from spirit into form, right? That'll become a little bit more obvious when I draw this out and tell you what it's made up of. But if you were here last week, you already know. You already know. But Yura actually means the word year, the name year. And so, we're talking fertility and cycles and all of that with Yura. But again, it's moving energy through. So it's another one of the as above, so below runes that we have. The next rune, is also the same type of energetic structure. Now, what to do with my paper? Here it is. Okay, pen. So, Yura. I'm going to draw a line, and I'll draw this stuff below the line so that I don't have to use a whole lot of paper. So here we have Yura, and there goes my pen. And I'm going to throw it in the garbage because I never do that. Here's a pen. And then what I'll do is I put it back in the pen cup, right? And then I'll get it again. So I don't know, like a couple months ago, I just started training myself just to throw something away immediately, because I don't. I mean, I'm not to the point of being a hoarder, mind you, but sometimes I wonder. So there's Yera. But what do we have? We have Kenaz, forward and reversed. The torch, the light of spirit, informing the entire process. So again, we're talking about the energy that is transformation, or the energy that's moving, is soul energy. Right? Right. In case you didn't know. So in terms of magic, then, how can we use, again, I've said that how can we use Yera? I've said that I've used it in garden vine runes to promote fertility and harvest and all of that, growth, development, change, all of that. You can also do it, though, given that its inclusion of Kenaz, you can use them for workings of clarity, but clarity that is informed by spirit. Okay? Alignment rituals. Again, we're moving energy in a balanced fashion. Very much like Gebo is the balanced energy exchange, so is this. Because in a sense, what we're doing all of the time when we're focused into form, you've got, and I've done this before in Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune, you've got this funnel, right? Oh, Lord, since I'm drawing things, I'll just draw it out. Here we are. This is your soul. Here we are in form. The rest of it is spiraling and swirling and interacting with all other soul energies, because we're one. We're the creator. Couldn't be separate if we tried. So, in terms of the soul focus, and why this is so important here, that Kenaz is really comprising all of this, what you have then, when we are focused into form at every given moment, you have this pressure from soul to say, remember me? I'd like to guide your experiences here. I'd like you to express soul energy instead of ego energy, but you need to listen to me, see? So when you see any of this energy, it's always a downward spiraling energy down into this minute aspect of self we call the body in creation. But rest assured, it's just a really tiny part of us. The rest of us is trying to inform all of this if we would just listen. So again, alignment rituals, then balance workings. Rituals to achieve balance, either within or between self and others. Understanding, seeing the self in others, or the other side of self in others instead of the other. It can be used in both healing and fertility rituals. So if you are trying to get pregnant, you could do a ritual using Yera and maybe Birkenau, which is going to be in the next video. We'll talk about that then. But you're talking about giving birth to something. Now, whether it's actual childbirth, or maybe the birth of a new project, or birth of a new direction in your life, you're considering making a profound change or something, you could use Yera for that. So the 13th rune then is Aiwas, not to be confused with Ewas. Ewas looks like an M. But Aiwas is the link between forces. It's both air and fire. It's comprised of lagus, upward and downward, which is water. So there's the change involved. Represents the U, represents Yggdrasil. Connection between opposites, the letter E, as above, so below, link between realms. Transwork, protection, transformation. It's also the rune of paradox. So let's draw that out and I'll show you what I mean. So here we have Aiwas. And I said already that it's Laguz, upwards and downwards or something. Because Laguz reversed would actually be this, I think. But again, it depends on what your perspective is. I mean, you could consider this to be Laguz reversed. Let's get up there where you can see it. But just like with Isa, because Isa is also contained within it as well, might as well draw that too. But we're talking a downward flow into spirit, will and intellect. The flow itself is water energy, so you know that's emotion. Because it's quite emotional for spirit to focus into form, that you do it because of love, right? Love of creation. But in a bind rune, it can be used to align energies. It can be used in an alignment ritual. You can use it to draw spirit into a working. Either having the rune sitting on the altar or drawing it out as you're chanting. You know, that's the other thing. You know, when you're using runes in Magick, if you devise a chant and you decide what runes am I going to use in this working, right? In this bind rune or in this ritual or whatever, you can align it with runes. Then each line of the chant is going to be associated with a particular rune. So if while you are chanting, that you draw the rune as you're chanting, you see, you can invoke that energy into the chant itself by just the simple drawing of it. So that's how you would draw spirit into a working, basically, all right? But you can use them in balance rituals, astral travel, path working, climbing back up the path. You use it again as a focus. You might want to, you know, make one a little bit bigger than that. You know, you can use, let's see, what did I do with my rune stock here? Oh, here's some. I don't know what I did with the others. I'm here somewhere. But I mean, you can use something this big. I think this is alder. Is this alder? Yeah, this is alder. But I have, you know, different, I got this at one of my youngest boys' place. And my husband has been slicing things up for me. So this would actually be a really good meditation focus. It would also be one you could use if you were working a spell. You would want to use, and you were doing a bind rune or something, you would want to use something bigger, or maybe something maybe half this size, but you likely wouldn't want to use, you know, a rune-sized bind rune or a piece of wood to make it. Let's see. Oh, here's the rest of them. But you could use, you can use, oh, here's some more alder. You can use all ye's in a, well, that's some birch, but it's small. You could use Aiwas in terms of a, here's a bigger one there, but not as big as the other. This is actually black locust. You can see the black on the inside. They don't lend themselves to runes very well, I'm afraid. But in any event, you can use it in a tree meditation. I don't know if you've ever done that, where you sit your back against a tree and you are aligning your chakras with the energy of the tree, basically. You can use Aiwas to do that and invoke the tree energy into the tree spirit into yours, basically, and align spirits that way. You know, source energy created the trees. You know, everything you see is a reflection of the creator in some fashion or another. So why wouldn't you want to align and do a little tree working or tree meditation? You could use it as in a ritual to raise frequency. Again, going up the rune, going up towards spirit. You could also use it in a healing ritual, particularly like if you had something structural going on, like maybe you had, a broken arm or a broken leg, or you're having back issues or something like that, something structural to bring healing and alignment to that. So did we? Yes, we did. We drew it and we talked about it. Now we'll move on to Perthro. Perthro is the 14th rune, 5 energy, so change. Basically, in a sense, it's another Norn rune, representing the well of word. This way, it represents birth. This way, it represents death. This can be a table, or invoking energies into earth. That could be a table. And we have some other, we see Laguz in it from last time. This, we see that. Perthro, the reason why it's thought to be related to the Norns is that it represents fate, and the idea that the Norns control men's fate. Again, water element rune, so emotions change. It can represent the womb. So here, pointing downward, expressing the child. Could be thought of that way, not just a desk or a table, but it's actually the womb, especially as it's expressing the child at that point, as it's birthing. Again, well of word, we said that. Childbirth, we said that. The letter P, healing, synchronicity, fate is often correlates with synchronicity. It's also thought to be the cup from which the runes are tossed, or the cup from which dice are tossed. You can think of it that way. So again, it's basically you're just casting the lots for fate. And I just say that I think we have a little bit more control over it than that. Again, it can be viewed as a cauldron, birth and death, divination. If we draw it out, though, and apologies in advance, because this is one of the ones I don't do very well. I can't get it even. I don't know why. I try. But there's there's Perthro, there is Laguz, there's Isa. Yeah, I was going to try and see if I could get Kenaz out of it, but I don't think so. It'd be a stretch. All the other stuff's starting to bleed through. Well, let me get another piece of paper, and then it won't look. It will. You'll be like, what does she put there? I either need a new tablet or I need to start cutting up copy paper. But basically, when you use Perthro in a ritual or in a spell working, you're going to be using it to transform fate into something else. Things are going in a direction, you want to have a little more control over it, then you would use Perthro to do that. It can also be used in healing rituals. The other thing that it can be used for, and that's why, Kenaz sort of comes to mind, because if you were, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and say that Kenaz is part of this. It's implied, because we could basically make a, we've got an interesting bind rune there. If we were to bring the lines toward the center of it, we now have Kenaz, don't we? We have the light of spirit, the torch. We also have Birkenau. See how easy bind runes are to make? Everything just flows into one another, don't they? But again, if you, and that would be a bind rune you could use right there, the top one. If you're trying to invoke something new, increasing self-awareness, revealing secrets and deception, transformation and rebirth. This would be a wonderful bind rune for transformation and rebirth up there at the top. And all I did was this. I'll draw it again. Well, let me do it this way. Make it a little bit bigger. So there you have Perth row. Okay. Now I'm going to take that top line and bring it to the center. See? And I'm going to draw it then and connect to the other one. And look what we have with Kenaz. A big one. So you can use that in a transformation or rebirth ritual, right? Understanding destiny, revealing secrets and deception. That was the one that I kind of got stuck on there. But the idea, of that is that, contained within fate might be some deception. If someone else is trying to control our fate, they're likely doing it by deceptive means, right? Trying to convince you of something that just isn't true. And then you do what they want you to do. They get everything, and you're standing there going, you're left holding the bag when the cops come, right? Yeah. So, increasing self-awareness, again, understanding destiny, fate, destiny, same sort of thing. But it's understanding that we have a whole lot more control than we know. And, we can take these, and especially in terms of combining some of these runic energies together, you can take them and you can create something more out of it. And that's why it's just so incredible to use these in Magick. It's just all built in. You just got to combine them or use one, whichever one fits, right? Allies. Now I have allies. Allies, to me, this is divine protection sigil, and I wear this as an amulet. I also wear Hagalas. It's another one I wear. I really should have all of my rune amulets on while I'm doing this. I'll do that for the next one. But allies is the elk or elk sedge, maybe. That's when the elk are out in the marshlands. You've got the sedge and it hides them. Basically, sometimes you'll see their horns sticking out, but that's about all you'll see if you're lucky. They sort of blend really well. Well, they're blending into this thing called elk sedge, this grassy stuff. Can also be thought of as two sides of a swan, with this part here and over here being their neck and head, basically, of the swan. It also represents, as far as protection goes, the divine protection, but it's also a Bifrost bridge between form and the astral realm. So it's another, as above, so below rune. It's another, you can look at this depending on the directionality you want to use for it. You can either think of it in terms of I'm raising my hands in supplication to spirit, or you're watching the funnel of fire, air, and water energy invoked into form. So if that's the case, you're looking at Isa in the center, aren't you? And you're seeing two little Kenazes at the top. So spirit's filling it, and then it's focusing into form. That's typically how I look at it, unless, I'm wanting that two-way exchange, and then it'll be supplication time, and I'm raising my arms, and I become allies, right? You can do that. You can act them out physically. But again, you can use it as an amulet. All of these runes can be carried as an amulet, worn as an amulet if you want to, like I do. You can wood burn them and then poke a hole in it. This is some birch. And then poke a hole in it and, wear it around your neck if you want. You just draw it on, wood burn it. However you want to do it, it doesn't really matter. I just like to use wood because I have a lot of it, and I just like it. I think it's rustic. I don't know. It's primal. It's earthy. I'm putting tree energy into everything. So, it's kind of a druid thing. I'm related to a bunch of druids. I'm related to Bran the Blessed. So, I have. It's so odd that I've always been interested in druidry, and I mean, I suppose if I had a religion, it would be that. I don't believe in religion. I don't think they're necessary, but I think that they're fine for people who find solace and comfort and fellowship and guidance and all of that. I think it's fine. But for me, I aligned more with druids, and wouldn't you know, when I did my ancestry, well, there they are. it's weird to be on both sides of the witch equation, to have, because I'm in the Merovingian line, so I have the kings and I have the queens and all of that, the royalty, but I have also some of them were witches and sorcerers and magicians also. And so you had the royalty, you had King James of both Scotland and England, who started the North Berwick witch trials. He wrote the book Demonology, and he's a cousin. His mother is an aunt, and then her father is a grandfather. And I don't know if he was King James the Fourth or what. I don't remember now. That could be her great grandfather. I don't know. I don't remember. It's hard to keep track of the lineage, especially when they take the same names. The longest time I switched the two guys, and because it wasn't King James that did the North Berwick witch trials that murdered my 14th great grandmother for witchcraft, that was the other one, the King James the Fourth, I believe, who did that. But you see, they were related. And so what you have here for me is I have people on both sides of that equation, those that were killing and murdering and torturing, women that were and men as well, that were thought to be witches. Whether they were or not doesn't really matter. Some were, some weren't. But then, so I have them on both sides, the witch and the murderer, right? Weird thing to think about. So in any event, I guess I've been so focused on protection and keeping my silence and all of that because somehow inside me, I knew all that, right? Didn't find it out until a few years ago when I started, I don't know when it was, 2007 or 8, when I started doing my ancestry. And that's when I found all this. I'm like, whoa. So anyway, you can wear it as an amulet for protection. And I recommend it. I really do. Any of them, whatever one speaks to you, that if you need it, if you need one for communication, choose Ansus. If you need to go talk to somebody, grab your Ansus and your rune, and go and have that with you when you speak to somebody, so that you speak more eloquently, right? But anyway, you can use all these in terms of a channeling experience. Again, you've got that either way, either direction, both directions, either invoking from spirit or reaching up to spirit. So you can, and in channeling, you're kind of allowing your consciousness to raise, aren't you? And to reach, and you're asking for help from whoever it is you're channeling, the guides that you're channeling, or higher self, to bring me up to you. And what you're doing there is you're saying, not physically, but that raise my vibration up to yours, so that I can align with you and we can communicate, right? Because it's all frequency. And we're just vibrating too low here to consciously reach them whenever we want to. We have to go within, we have to meditate, we have to really align and let the frequency rise, and then maybe. This should just be the way it is all the time, right? And we're not doing that because our frequency is so low. And our vibration is so low. We start vibrating higher and faster, and suddenly we see things that we don't see right now. Physically, we will see them. They will be here because they are here. They're just in a different frequency. And so we all exist in the same spot, in a sense, right? So again, alignment ritual, trance work, all use is perfect for that. So the last rune, the 16th rune, it's a 7 energy, again, and we'll talk about that because that's important, is Sewillow. It's a sun rune. As above, so below energy. You can see that, can't you? You see that horizontal line in the middle? That's a demarcation line between spirit and form. That's the abyss. Kind of looks like a lightning bolt, doesn't it? But it's a fire element rune. It is the letter S. It's a rune of the will, and of spirit guidance, energy, vitality, the light, the sun, self-confidence, healing, higher self, illumination, link between spirit and form. Now, this is Sewillow. And like in all Yis, we have a couple of skewed Kenazes, so the light of spirit, again. But this demarcation line right here, again, that's the abyss. That's the part that we move through when we focus into form. If you've ever looked at the Kabbalah, the tree of life from the Kabbalah, you know, you're looking at 10 spheres and you're looking at lines. I have this great thing, and I cannot for the life of me remember where I got it. I might have got it from Donald Craig's Modern Magic book. I don't know. But he's talking about, you know, ceremonial magic in that book. And I love ceremonial magic. I don't really perform it, but I just think it's cool. I find their rituals to be really amazing. And I don't really use them because I'm not a magician, I'm a witch, so I don't know. I'm just not into it. But at the same time, I find them fascinating because when you start to look at what they've done, and I think it was in Don Craig's book, I'm not positive though. I'll double check and I'll let you know in the next video what it was. But there's this chart of where they've taken the Tree of Life and they've inserted the major arcana on it. And you look at, and they talk about that first line. You've got the first three, and then you've got that line there. There's your line of abyss. And you're going down through that. Was it the high priestess that does that? That goes down through the I don't know. The magician's over here, and I'm not sure where the fool is. But it was just brilliantly done, and I copied it out. I drew it out myself, and I have it somewhere. But I'll see if I can find that. The idea, though, I would love to do that with the Elder Futhark, though. Maybe someone already has. But I would like to see how that fits, how the Elder Futhark fits on the Tree of Life. But that's where I was first introduced into the concept of the abyss. And when you start to think about it, you know, everything that we start to, whether you want to talk about the so-called 10 Commandments down below the abyss in a way. But up above, you've got the fool, you've got the magician, and you've got the high priestess. Because that's where the alchemical decision was made to focus into form. But Sawillo, basically what we're talking about in terms of uses in magic, we're talking about attracting positivity with it. We could use it in workings to create harmonious relationships, rituals for peace and healing, success working, relieving conflict, protection, a clarity working. Again, Kenaz is contained within it. It's the rune of the sun. It's the rune of the will. But you can also, if you're an empath and you need to shield, you can also use Sawillo to do that, to invoke your shield of protection. So, but basically, you know, it's really the blend of the divination and then the expression of that in terms of magic that I think that gives the runes its greatest power. And really, the power of transformation is really to transform you. And to invoke spirit maybe into the rest of it, right? So that people have the opportunity at that point to then choose, you know, ego or spirit. Do I listen to the message that's being sent to me? Can I let that inform the choices that I'm currently making, or am I just going to be a slave to ego and I'm just going to do what it wants me to do? You know, in other words, like with Perthrow, who's controlling the fate? Is it spirit or is it the ego? So, in any event, that I guess that'll do it. I'm not really sure what else I can say. Well, there's probably a million more things I could say. But take a look at these runes, and you know this particular Aett, particularly the runes that are considered the Norn runes. If you look at that as the beginning point of it, okay, put them up first. Hagalaz, Snathis, and you know, when you're studying here. put them above the other 5. And then think about the influence of the Norns, the past, the present, and the future. Think about their influences in terms of that, and then see how it informs the other 5. And let that just be a little exercise you try for yourself, and see what you come up with. Because we're talking about fate. How are we going to manage fate? Are we going to let spirit do that? Are we going to bring things into alignment so that we can then progress on in unity consciousness, basically? Because that's really one of the lessons of the runes, isn't it? I think. Pretty sure. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate this. This is fun. I like doing this. I mean, it was just kind of came to me, well, why don't we just do a Foundations in Magic series? And, it's difficult because I'm a solitary witch. I have Norse traditions that I use. So a lot of rune stuff. I'm an herbalist, and so I basically identify as a hedge witch, if you want to call it that, because I'm into trance work and I'm into herbalism and all of that. I do a lot of herb magic. I do a lot of influence magic within the trance state. So I think to try to do a Foundations in Magic, it's kind of, well, says who, who are you? So this is basically how I conceive of things. It's just one way of looking at all of it. You can do anything you want. I tend to come from an esoteric background in terms of esoteric thinking, so we're talking secret doctrine, we're talking the stanzas of Dazan or Daisen or whatever. We're talking the Kabbalion. I did a video, a 2-part series on the Kabbalion where we talked about that. But I like working with foundational energies. And so I guess that's why I came up with the idea of Foundations in Magic. And it's really not so much, tradition or anything like that, but what are the nuts and bolts of it? And for me, using runes is part of that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Come back for the 3rd one. Well, I just threw one on the floor. I'll get it in a minute as soon as I can find it. I'm going to need a light, though, I think, to try to find it, because those are my runes I use every day. Anyway, I'll find it, though. But in any event, I will hope you come back for the next one. We'll look at the last 8. And then close out that series, and then we'll figure out something else to do. Maybe we'll look at the tarot. I know we did mojo bags in one of them, and that's kind of a foundational type of thing. But I'll give it some thought, and I'll see where else I want to take this. But look for the next one. I'll probably do it next Saturday, and I'll go ahead and I'll post it on Patreon for patrons, and lock it there for 3 weeks. And then I have it set up on YouTube, where on 3 weeks later, I think it's on February 24th, it's going to go live on the YouTube channel in the esoteric studies section, or whatever I have it called. Anyway. I've got a couple different sections on that YouTube channel, and I mean, it'll also be up in the regular video section, but I like to group things. I mean, I used to tab the phone book, so, I don't know. Anyway, I like things grouped, so I can just easily go to the tab that I need, right? But in any event, look for it there. So this, again, will go up today on Patreon, and be unlocked as of 3 weeks from now, so that everybody can see it. But in any event, I changed how I do that over there on Patreon, and I'm not doing any specific tiers anymore. Just, if you want to watch it, pay whatever you want, and there you go. So that's all I wanted to do in the first place. I didn't know how to make that happen when I signed up to be on Patreon, when I created that page over there. And so anyhow, I didn't know how to do it. I just thought, there's got to be a way. It just wasn't obvious. And so I figured it out. So I changed it last week. So anyway, now there's no actual tiers to belong to, and I think that's better. So anyhow, again, thank you so much for watching, and come back next time, and we'll finish out the Elder Futhark together. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.